Welcome to today's class. I believe you are all okay. Today we are going to talk about purchasing and contracts. So it's always important when you are entering into contracts in purchasing to consider some various aspects. And remember, purchasing is all about contracts because you are entering into contracts with various suppliers from various walks of life. So it's always very important when you're doing procurement. You must always choose the best suppliers. So what is a contract? So a contract by definition is a legal binding agreement between two or more parties, and one of the parties is known as the buyer and the other one is known as the seller. So when you are entering into a purchasing contract, the keyword that you need to consider there are the two parties, which are the buyers and the sellers. And the buyers in this sense is the organization that is buying goods, works or services from the seller, and the seller in this sense is the supplier. So a contract basically allows the relationship between the buyer and the seller, and for the contract to be successful, we must have a win-win relationship between the seller and the buyer. So what are some of the essentials of a purchasing contract? One of the essentials is that a purchasing contract must have a transaction that is going to satisfy both the requirements of the buyer and of the seller. So one of the essentials requirement is the legal capacity of the parties. So the person who is performing the buying and selling should have a legal capacity to enter into a contract. So that person must not be a minor, and that person must be of the age of majority. And in this case, in the Kenyan context, the age of majority is 18 years. The person should also be authorized by the employer to perform on behalf of the organization. So legal capacity is very important for the parties. The other thing that is very important is the legality of the subject matter. So this means basically that the transaction should not be illegal or opposed by the public policy, such as buying at a price higher than those fixed by the government, or selling unlawful items, or using procurement procedures that are not allowed by the organization. So if this happens, therefore that means the contract is null and void. The other important thing that you need to consider is offer and acceptance. In a contract where you buy or sell, there should be an offer to buy or sell, and the other party must accept the offer. So once they accept, then it means the contract is valid. So the other important thing that you need to consider is the consideration. And consideration in this sense is the money factor. So a contract in which only the seller is obliged to supply certain goods is enforceable. Therefore, there should be corresponding agreements on the part of the buyer to pay a certain amount or a certain consideration to the supplier, depending on the agreement, depending on how much you're supposed to pay the supplier once the goods have been delivered to your organization. The other important thing are the formalities. We have two major formalities when it comes to purchasing contract, and one of the formalities is the warranty, and we also have the conditions. A warranty is a term that do not go into the root of the contract and therefore cannot terminate a contract. There are two kinds of warranties. We have expressed warranty and we have implied warranty. Under expressed warranty, these are expressed during the sale, and therefore the seller must comply with them. So therefore, during the sale of an item, it is always important for the seller to comply with the expressed warranty. The other one is the implied warranty. These are assumed warranties, and therefore they are not expressed during the sale. The other important formality is the conditions. The conditions are expressed in terms that go to the rest of the contract, and they can affect the results of the contract at the end of the day, and this might lead to termination of a contract. So it is always important for both parties to ensure that they follow the conditions that are laid down when it comes to the purchasing contract. So another important aspect during purchasing contract is the issue of debriefing your suppliers. So what is debriefing? So remember, you have many suppliers in place, and once you have those suppliers, there are those suppliers that will be successful on a particular bid and others will not be successful. So that process of communicating to your suppliers on the successful and unsuccessful suppliers is what we are referring to as debriefing. So you are giving the reasons as to why a particular supplier was chosen and another supplier was not chosen. So what are some of the recommendations during debriefing? The first recommendation is that you should not disclose the information about other tenderers that will breach commercial confidentiality. So you are not supposed to give information. So information about your suppliers must be very confidential, in that no other supplier is supposed to know the information about another supplier. It should also not become an argument about likes or wrongs, or as an attempt to justify the reasons for awarding the contract to a particular tenderer. So it's always important to give reasons for awarding a particular tenderer, and this therefore means at the end of the day the supplier will not end up arguing with each other. The other important aspect during debriefing is that it should be confined to unsuccessful bidders, the weaknesses that led to their rejection. So you should always give the unsuccessful bidders as to why they were not chosen during the bidding process. And lastly, it should be concluded by asking for the supplier's view on the debriefing process. So you also need to get feedback on the side of the supplier. Basically, that allows the suppliers to share their experiences and give their views concerning the process of debriefing. So what are some of the benefits? So the first benefit is that it enhances establishing a reputation as a fair, honest, and open, ethical client. So basically that reputation of the organization is recognized. Basically you are able to maintain a good reputation to your suppliers and future suppliers also. It provides unsuccessful tenderers with some of the benefits from time to time and the money spent on preparing their tenders by helping them to be more competitive in future. So the information you give your unsuccessful suppliers will ensure them that they are going to prepare for future bidding so that they become competitive at the end of the day. It also protects the purchasing organization from legal action by unsuccessful tenders. So basically it allows the organization to avoid legal action on the side of the suppliers so that they are not taken to court to question their process of tendering. So what are some of the types of purchasing contract? We have various types of purchasing contracts, but these can be divided into various categories. The first one is fixed price contracts. Then we also have cost reimbursement contracts. We have time and material contracts, and we have target pricing contracts. So let's start with the first one. Fixed price contracts or lump sum contracts. As the name suggests, fixed price contract is a contract whereby the organization is given a particular amount of money to work with. Failure to finish that money, then it means at the end of the day the risk goes back to the supplier. So basically when you talk about fixed price contracts, you agree with the parties agree on a particular figure that they are going to use, and at the end of the day when that figure is not basically is not enough, then the other party will pay for the rest of the amount. The other one is the firm fixed price contracts. Firm fixed price contracts. This is the simplest type of procurement contract, and the fee is fixed. The seller has to complete the job within the agreed amount, of money, and the time and cost increased due to bad performance of the seller will be the responsibility of the seller. We also have the fixed price incentive fee. In this kind of contract, therefore, allows the seller to be given an additional incentive based on his or her performance. The incentive lowers the risk borne by the seller. The other one is the fixed price with economic price adjustment. In this type of contract, it includes the special provision in a clause which protects the seller from inflation. Therefore, the cost of the project will be increased after a certain time or duration due to the economic changes. So the second type of contract is cost reimbursement contract. In this type of contract, also known as the cost dispersal contract, is a type of contract where the seller is reimbursed for complete or plus a certain fee is added representing his profits. So sometimes this fee must be paid if the seller meets or exceeds what you had agreed upon. Cost reimbursement contracts bears a disadvantage when there is no clarity in the requirements. These contracts can be further divided into 4, and this includes cost plus fixed contracts. We have cost plus incentive fee. We have cost plus award fee. Basically, that is what we were talking about. And as you all know, purchasing contract is very key when it comes to procurement. So if you don't do your contracts well, then at the end of the day, you might end up failing as an organization. Thank you for listening.